thank you very much for joining me. We're going to be talking voice in collaboration as a key point here. We've been talking all morning about the value of voice in terms of that data piece. So I'll tell you what, why don't we start off with a really brief round of introductions, and Craig, if I could start with you.
Yeah, sure. Hey guys. Yeah, this is working. So Craig Whittingham, so I head up the agentic AI components for NTT across Asia-Pac, with specific focus on voice and integration with back-end business apps.
Ben Swanson, is this working? Yes. Just checking. I'm with RingCentral, based in Australia. Head up the channels here for Asia Pacific.
Hi, Jason Gilligan, Head of Global Strategic Business Development at Zoom and focusing on our service provider build out right now.
Hi, I'm Dominic McDonald, Chief Executive ULAP. We do borderless communication simplified.
So we wanted to talk about voice. My primary expertise, if you can give me any expertise, would be North America and Western Europe. I've done a lot of research calls looking at the differences in the market. So I wanted to start with a pretty broad, open-ended question, if that's right. And Dominic, you're furthest away from me, so I was going to come to you first. How do you see the voice market in APAC, and we are talking about the broader APAC, as compared to other markets globally?
I'd like to kind of separate Asia and PAC, if you don't mind, because
I completely agree.
There's a complete differentiator, and I think adoption is quite different. And what we specifically see in the Southeast Asia market is very different to the Australia, New Zealand market. But I think adoption of the actual unified communications platforms is real. So there's been mass adoption, in particular to chat and internal voice. But in terms of external PSTN connectivity, it's a very immature stage in the greater Asia region. Outside of the mature jurisdictions, it's quite the opposite.
Yeah, so real distinction there. And I think we've gathered that through the research, and we'll share some of the data with you later on in terms of the penetration rates, adoption of cloud, if you look at Australia and New Zealand versus some of those Southeast Asian markets. Jason, I seem to be on panels with you all over the world. So would you like to give me your opinions on sort of APAC, Australia, New Zealand versus the global markets?
Yeah, I'm going to go a little farther than Dom went, actually. I think it's immature globally. I think that, like, when we're looking at the adoption that we have for voice into our cloud PBXs, it's hardly existent, right? You look at Microsoft, for example, obviously has 320 million-ish daily active users. They've got 26 million on Teams Voice today.
6% adopt, 8%, something like that.
Zoom has 10 million voice seats. I think Ring has somewhere around 7-8 million, right? And you look at all the on-premise seats that we have out there, that's 320-ish million, 350 million out there.
467 million business telephony users for the Cavell.
That's what we bring along here. But I think it's we've struggled to show the value of consolidation.
Yep.
That we've continued to say that consolidation, make it easier to manage, yada yada yada, and we struggled to show that actually is something that they're willing to go do because they have assets are willing to go sweat. I think AI is going to change that topic though, and change like how we're going to be able to go and really go sell that value.
I think the AI piece is really important in terms of adding that value to voice, convincing people to add voice to collaboration. Ben, Ring, we chatted on the preliminary calls. You've done a lot of work in India. Your thoughts on the global market and the Asian, APAC, Australia, New Zealand region?
Yeah, so definitely from an ANZ perspective in the Pacific region, we're seeing the coupling of both the software and the PSTN with great penetration. As we go outside of that, Japan, Singapore is certainly just behind that and starting to pick up. Though there's some opportunities I would see in those regions and further beyond Asia to partner with service providers coupling the software to get that penetration rate up is number one. Challenges in all different markets, from getting through the China firewall to India, huge expense to go and get local regulation and seeing the local logical petitioning rules to overcome that penetration, which is picking up. But most of those markets are multinational companies which are adding their B-leg branch offices to those particular locations. So global MNCs naturally adopting it everywhere. That local penetration needs to pick up. And I'd have to absolutely agree that the biggest mega trend we're seeing in our lifetimes is AI. We've had a mobile phone at our hands now for 20 plus years. The best connectivity and cloud communications behind that in cloud compute. We're now going to have the power at our fingertips to really get the benefits of AI. And voice language is based on interaction on the voice itself. So that's at the core of what we sell every day.
And just in terms of the size of the market, depending on what you include, primarily the Chinese and Indian markets that are particularly difficult to get solid data out for, you're talking 150 million telephony users potentially. So really sizable markets. Great. NTT, your success has been complicated global voice. So what are your thoughts on the region and versus Western Europe, North America?
Yeah, look, I think what we're seeing is a real differentiation between the kind of more mature markets, right? Like Australia, New Zealand, the US, that sort of stuff, where you can do things like even simple things like number portability, right? If you look at a market that you think is normally mature, like maybe Malaysia, they've only recently introduced portability for mobile. They still don't have portability for fixed number. So that creates all sorts of problems, but it also creates opportunities, right? So across Asia, you've got hundreds of different languages and dialects. And so the ability for AI to be able to go into those companies and say, hey, we can deploy a solution and it's going to work across 30 different languages and dialects. That creates a lot of opportunity for people. But, the integration of tooling like Teams and all that sort of stuff, we still see a real divide between, different jurisdictions in Asia where they're still very much, and traditionally it's where the carriers in those regions have, they're government owned, for example, right? They seem to be much, much slower. Then you look at markets like Singapore and that sort of stuff, much more open, much more dynamic. So yeah, it really depends on where in Asia you're talking about.
Yeah, I think that's one of the key pieces that certainly we've realised with the research. It's very easy for me to generalise, and Dom, to your point, straight up talking about APAC as if it's one market. It's very much. I actually see a lot of similarities between Europe before the single market, a collection of different cultures, languages. Trent and I will talk about this a bit later on. Jason, I wanted to come to you. You made the point in terms of the penetration. If you look at the Zoom user base globally, tens, hundreds of millions of users using meeting software, all of the other areas within the portfolio, the voice penetration considerably smaller. How do you see that evolving? What do you have to do as Zoom to encourage more people to use PSTN telephony and Zoom phone within the...
Sure. As we talked about, I think that AI kind of changes that conversation. Before, we had these silos of communication. We tried to say the value of consolidating and that you're going to have your value and your cost savings there. I would say that clearly didn't work and has not worked. I say now that if you're looking at like Zoom, for example, you're not turning on AI with Zoom, right? It's embedded across everything we do. So when you do that with phone as well, you're getting AI and all the things that go with that. So I think when you're using communication platform, you're getting AI across all of it. You want it across your phone calls as well and be able to go do all the agentic AI things that are coming and are there today. And you're going to start to actually see real value and a reason to consolidate onto a single platform and have AI wrapped around all of that. I think that's where you're going to actually start to see the adoptions to actually start to pick up in cloud communication on a single platform.
And that's what Matt and I were trying to talk about with the concept of the intelligent work. That's a hypothetical concept, but ultimately you want as many things in one platform as possible that makes it as easy as possible, potentially. From the RingCentral perspective, what's your sort of primary focus in terms of trying to look, and you appreciate all of those different markets, trying to raise that PSTN adoption and help partners do that as well?
So I guess where we're focused heavily on is verticalization, some of the points that you raised before. So when we see companies not only just having, customer-facing agents, which is not really agents these days, just answering the phone calls from their UC platform, when they have a data analytics team and coupling that with the AI products and the different solutions that we're providing, that's providing real value to looking at the insights of their conversations are having. And once their internal teams are driving, the right attitudes and the right customer service, we're seeing greater penetration around that PSTN adoption for sure.
And Craig, from a differentiation point of view, what is it that you've done at NTT Data to try and differentiate your offering from other providers looking to enable global voice?
Yeah, I think the global voice is a key point, right? So obviously as a global organization, we operate in all of the different markets. I think we were quite early on the AI stuff as well. So today, if you go into our platforms, you can configure multiple agents. Those agents can talk to each other using things like MCP or agent to agent. And that allows customers to actually go in and literally within 2 or 3 minutes, and if you want to see this, come and see me afterwards, enables them to go in and set up agents, right? Literally with a couple of clicks. you configure the agents using things like just context, right? If you think about it like prompt engineering when you're talking to ChatGPT or that sort of stuff, you can now set up agents that way, right? And so that's enabled us to really have discussions with clients about, well, how many licenses do you really need for your CX system, right? And what we're seeing is clients who can move maybe 30 or 40% of their PSTN calls out of their CX systems and have those answered by agents. So we're seeing that kind of innovation really drive clients.
And it came back on the research. It's that number one requirement: operational efficiency and productivity using AI is a key area. Tom, I wanted to ask you about something very specific. We had a really interesting chat when we were building up into this into this section. APAC specific regulatory technical requirements, pretty complicated, and I realise we've got sort of 10-15 minutes left. I wanted to get your thoughts, because this is something that you specialise in at ULAP. Just your thoughts on some of those regulatory pieces around the Southeast Asian markets in particular.
Yeah, I think really from the onset, Unified Communications and Cloud Contact Center is designed to work from everywhere. Fixed voice services are not designed in the same fashion. And that's really the real challenge. So in some jurisdictions, let's pick on an alternative jurisdiction for the purpose of this audience. So in Saudi Arabia, as an example, where regulations are changing, becoming more open, effectively a fixed line number should only legally can be used at the physical location of the address. So once you use Teams or Zoom or 8x8 or whatever, and you leave the jurisdiction, you're actually breaching the regulatory approach automatically.
Yeah.
So coming to where we're looking at this is, and this is something I'm really happy to share here, we're working with 4 regulators right now. We're very, very active in the International Telecommunications Union, the ITU, and also with digital. Effectively, we're lobbying for a new country code. So we're pitching to the technical working group a new country code that's been reserved for global communications, which is the plus 999, effectively to have one number range that can work from anywhere, but also to be a gold standard for defending or getting around spam calling and robocalling. So if you've been issued this number range, you've been given the gold clearance to make calls anywhere. So that's something that we're working very diligently on to combat a lot of these challenges. We have worked with a number of regulators in Brunei Darussalam, the regulator, AITI. We have been successful, and we worked with them on a workshop where we actually developed a non-geographical area code specifically for numbers to work anywhere. So one of the challenges is, you can get a Sydney number, go anywhere in the world and make and receive calls, but you can't do that in a number of jurisdictions. So
yeah, without breaking local regulations and laws. And
correct.
That's the key point.
So I think the thing is, we've developed a sovereignty operating system where we can actually deliver that across the whole region, where customers can use a single platform, and we help them with that.
And it's that sort of initiative that I think is really important in communities like ours that we support. So if you're interested in that, do come and chat to Dom. Okay, I asked you about NTT differentiation, so I'll come back to you in a little second. Jason, go ahead, please, Jason.
I'm actually going to double down on Dom's comment here real quick. As we kind of have global rollouts that we work on, and we're working on, starting our service provider business and working with tier 1 telcos in a lot of these regions, we actually have a very big partnership with ULAP for exactly what Dom said, right? We have a lot of US-based, European-based enterprises that are looking to go roll out into very difficult geographic regulatory countries in APAC that maybe they want to keep the number, they need geofencing, they can't port, all these type of things that ULAP is able to go in there and do. So there's still a huge, market that you guys are able to go address that not a whole lot of other people are able to go do. So even if there's a tier 1 telco in that country that Zoom may be working with, they're not able to actually go fill our customer requirements. So what Dom and ULAP do is very unique, and they've had several big deals come across the line helping us with that.
Yeah, and I think that's it's a really important piece to understand the nuance of all of these different countries and markets. I wanted to ask a little bit about, we've got so many service providers and partners, and Ben, I wanted to come to you on that. What are you looking for in a partner in order for them to be successful with the RingCentral proposition? What are those attributes that you're looking for in a partner?
Yeah, look, at the core of any partnership is the relationship. So making sure the relationship is strong, the capacity inside the sales team as well as the delivery components are If you had to pick one thing, it's managing the customer lifecycle. So together we can go and look after the customer from that marketing and acquisition perspective through to the success and the ongoing management on throughout the journey. Absolutely.
And we talked a bit about Cavell Insights platform that tracks channel partners. And both from the RingCentral and Zoom perspective, your portfolio is so broad. Is it difficult to find partners that can sell the entire Ring portfolio? You've got events in there, you've got calling, UCaaS, all of those things. Is it difficult to find partners with all of those? Do they need all of the skill sets in order to sell the portfolio?
Yeah, I guess for our partnering model, it ranges from, a referral through to a resell. So it depends on what that particular partner looks like. It could be partnered with some existing relationships and they sell other technology. Through to they focus heavily on voice, and that's what they do every day. So there is a range in that, and that certainly fits the ecosystem of our product portfolio, definitely. But there's certainly a niche within that as well that we look for.
And Craig, I wanted to come to you on maybe a slightly more complicated topic in terms of and I'll come to all of you on this. If we look at the region, and again, if we look at Australia, New Zealand, and APAC, are there key economic, geopolitical, we've got a lot of this in Europe at the moment, tensions between North America and Western European government. Are there key either geopolitical or economic factors that you're considering when you go into different markets and have customers that you need to serve in different markets? Anything that you'd highlight?
Yeah, look, I spoke earlier about the regulatory one, so that's obviously you need to look at that as you move into each. I think one of the things, and I think you guys touched on it earlier too, it's about really understanding your client and how your client actually wants to work, right? Like we've all got products, right? And all of those products and all of us up here have unique products, right? But if you can go into your client and actually say, well, blank sheet of paper, right? What would you take? I've got a whole heap of products in my back pocket, but if I could develop something for you that's specific for your particular region or your particular client, what would it look like? Because it's never been easier or faster to be able to develop products than it is in the world today, right? So we're seeing that some of the things that are challenges, particularly in terms of regulatory and that sort of stuff across different regions, you can get away with, maybe modifying a process or something like that. But you can't do that if you don't really understand the products and what your customer's actually wanting, right? So that ability to be able to go in and say, well, here's something unique that we've built just for you to get around this particular problem that you've got in this region, is something that we're seeing more and more.
That point on development speed is really interesting. And anyone who's been following the news out of Silicon Valley for the last couple of weeks in terms of the numbers of developers that have come to the market shows that actually the pace of AI is going to be developing itself pretty soon. So that's even the capability of developing your own products is going to dramatically increase. So I think understanding the customer is key. Dom, I wanted to come back to you on that. If we look at some of those Southeast, anything particularly interesting that you'd pick out that's a real challenge if you were looking to, and I realise you've got you're across many of those markets, but any sort of particularly interesting stats that you'd pull out?
Actually, I'd just love to do a call out. Sam from 8x8, I think, really proud of what they've done in France with the sovereignty decision. And I think there's going to be more and more of that come around where the expectation will be that the data must be sovereign within the jurisdiction.
It's one of the main things that comes in our research that it needs to be increasingly.
So to give you an example, the central bank in the Philippines does allow for data currently to be resided in Singapore because that's where the majority of the hyperscalers reside for Southeast Asia. However, they are going to be clawing that back, which is now forcing the hyperscalers to have a presence in the jurisdiction. So that's always been the issue. And then obviously you have the geopolitical issues. We operate services in both mainland China and the Republic of China, and that's a significant challenge in itself, as well as cross-border into Kazakhstan. That's another challenging one that we've been able to successfully navigate. But I think the common theme is sovereignty and regulatory compliance, because that's what Fortune 500 companies want. They want an insurance policy that they're operating correctly, that they can go to bed at night and they're doing everything by the book, and that their services are going to be operable. So it's no longer in terms of revenue of minutes, it's the revenue of the surety of service.
And that's a really good point, because we're aware of examples where those regulations are not being met, and the fines can be really considerable in some of those markets. So ensuring that your customers and ultimately yourself are protected is really key. Jason, I wanted to come in terms of how partners are successful for Zoom, particularly outside of maybe the core meetings portfolio, into phone, what are you doing when you're talking to your strategic partners to try and help them sell the broader portfolio? And have you seen that vary by success in different regions at all?
We've definitely seen it vary by success on different regions. And to go back to your earlier comment, trying to find the right partner for the right region is key as well. I think when you're looking at like what Dom was saying here about the sovereignty as well, I mean, that's huge in what our partners are looking for right now. We had a conversation with a tier 1 service provider in EMEA last week and heard all the things that they had to say. And I'm going to date myself when I say this here, but I'm like, you basically want a Polycom Accord video bridge on premise from 2005 is what you're looking for, right? So we've really gone back to what that idea is. Like, sovereign is a lot of different things, a lot of different partners right now. Does sovereign mean sovereign? Does it mean it has to sit there, have to be in their data center, have to do that? Or does it mean they have to have agency over where that data is, who has access to that data? So I think that's where this conversation is going to really change over the next 6 to 12 months on what does sovereign actually mean, and what are you actually looking to get? Are you looking to go and touch it in your rack, or are you looking to be able to make sure that you have the encryption keys to be able to make sure that the US Cloud Act can't go and access your data? So I think that's what those partners are really going in after and trying to figure out themselves right now, because I've been doing this for 25 years now, and I think there's been more geopolitical conversations about this in the last 6 weeks
I would agree.
than there has been in the last 10 years and what that looks like. So I think finding the right partners and finding out what we actually want to jointly solve for, and I think it's a moving target right now. We have a president of the United States is currently a moving target as well, and trying to keep up with that is a lot right now.
Yeah, I think your point on definitions is key. I think if I've ever heard the same definition of a hybrid deployment from any two people, it's been incredibly impressive. It's always slightly different. I wanted to sort of wrap up with a final key question for each of you, and a sort of open-ended question. You can feel free, and Craig, I was going to come to you first on this. If we go ahead, Cavell, we forecast 5 years out. Forecasting 5 years, incredibly difficult. Anybody who did any forecasting pre-pandemic will be fully aware of how much that shifted the models. So if we look ahead to 2030, 2031, Craig, what's voice going to look like? Is it going to be how we utilize it now? What do you think from an NTT perspective? You talked a bit about voice agents. What do you think voice is going to look like at that time?
Yeah, look, I think, and someone touched on earlier, it might have been yourself actually, that voice is not going to go away, right? So we're seeing that voice is still a very, very important part of how companies interact with their clients, right? And I think that's going to continue. We're going to see the ability for clients to be able to do, if we look forward to like 2030 and that sort of stuff, voice agents are just going to be pervasive across the internally and externally, right? So you're going to have, instead of just calling up someone inside your business to say, hey, I need to get a new keyboard, or I need to inquire about this particular procurement process. That's all just going to be agentic driven, right? So you're going to have people who are managing teams of agents, and the agents are going to be doing a lot of that work. But then interactions with external people is still going to be voice, right? You're still always going to have customers who are going to call up, ask questions, that sort of stuff. So a lot of it's going to be driven through multi-agent.
And one of the things we've seen in mature markets is voice traffic actually starting to fall. But there's an argument with voice agents that actually that will increase voice traffic in the future, because if you can much more easily resolve an issue by calling a bot, you don't have to have agent availability. That might increase that traffic.
Yeah, exactly. We're seeing clients who have rolled out agentic solutions into their CX platforms actually see a drop in the interactions through their website and an increase in the voice interactions, just because it's so much quicker and easier for people to do it that way.
People have been obfuscating calls to the contact center for a long time, so hopefully that'll be. Ben, something that RingCentral have done incredibly well from inception, cloud PBX, voice has been at the core of the proposition. How, from a Ring perspective, what do you see that looking like if we go out over the long term?
Yeah, so long term, voice is not going away. Voice is the strongest way that as humans we interact with each other and convey in the quickest possible means any sort of empathy feeling part of our. You can send a message and it can be taken the wrong way, as we know, many times over. So yeah, it's not going away. I would see that convergence of the CX and UC components coming together, as we said, in SMBs. Everything we've developed for the large enterprise around contact center is proliferating into the smallest of enterprises out there. And then all of the benefits that we've got in that technology build is being delivered at a fingertip, really, at that rapid pace. So we're going to see a lot more of that filtering down to every size organization. And yeah, voice will be there forever.
That filtering down to organisations of all, I think that's really important, because we saw the AI adoption slides before. It's much lower in the micro business. I think that's going to change. It has happened in the contact centre. That's suddenly become ubiquitous. It's much more available for smaller businesses. So I think that's a really interesting point. Jason, from the Zoom perspective, I was playing with virtual avatars the other day, and the Zoom portfolio incredibly broad. Zoom Phone obviously key to that. How key do you think it's going to be in 2030 to the Zoom portfolio?
Yeah, I mean, kind of double down on what Ben said. I mean, I think that as you wrap AI around it, voice only becomes more important as you get able to understand like sentiment analysis and things like that. When you're doing AI context and be able to go do action items and things like that, that a bot or a chat, you simply can't get the context on what that looks like. So I think that as we continue to kind of evolve, especially in the next few years, I think it's going to be more and more important as we go.
Excellent. And last point to you on that. I know you're working with so many of the providers in the room, and voice is so core to the business. How do you see what you're doing now changing maybe in 2030?
I'm just going to give just 30-second kind of backstory to this.
Go.
I think what Zoom has done and others in India, specifically the TRAI, is probably one of the hardest in the world, and it's a great testament. But in the United Nations General Assembly in December, which I was present at, there was the WSIS 20+, which is how do we get the remaining 2 billion people connected?
Yeah.
So the official number has come out just prior to the pandemic. We've now seen that inflection point that fixed voice will not grow any more than where it's at today. Africa, Asia, it's becoming mobile first.
Completely mobile centric.
So I think we have to really look at those things. But in terms of enterprise solutions, the AI regulation is coming, and it's coming in a big hurry, right? And unfortunately, we've been working with Meta and others where the misuse of AI has becoming real, and the misuse opportunities with these tools make it very easy for people to go beyond the IRS scams, right? It's quite scary what's now been capable. So I think people like Zoom and like Jason, very complementary to their AI journey. They'll be able to implement these regulations, which are going to really craft the way it goes moving forward. And the regulators making a gold standard, and everyone will put their variants on it. So it's going to be very challenging by 2030, jurisdiction by jurisdiction. How will AI apply to each jurisdiction?
That's a really good point. We talk about all the benefits of AI, but also all the inherent security risks that go alongside that. And I think it's something that we all need to be conscious of. Also, the rate of development, I think trying to forecast 5 years out, I have to do this regularly on a data perspective, is a challenge. That was really interesting. Ladies and gentlemen, round of applause for all of my panelists. Dom from ULAP, Ben from RingCentral, Jason from Zoom, and Craig Whittingham from NCT Data.